All right, we're going to walk through the Engage MindTap assignment for Trusted Friends Daycare, which is T5 Case Problem Review. We want this page to be compatible with mobile devices, tablets, and desktops, and printers. We're going to be making a mobile version of the site, something for tablets, another design for desktops, and then finally some printer design. Notice the order of this, right? Mobile's first, and we talked about that in class, the mobile first design. We already have the content and the design done. We are ready to get going. Here we go. Go to tftips.html, add a viewport meta tag to the document head with the width, layout, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I mentioned this in class. Viewport meta tag is one of those things that you write once and you copy and paste to all your other projects. So I'm just going to look up HTML viewport meta tag. Using W3 Schools is always the probably the best resource. The developer.mozilla is a little technical, and here it is, viewport meta tag. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to dump it in here, and just make sure that the width of the viewport is equal to the width of the device. So width equals device width, and the initial scale is 1. Great. And then create links to these CSS documents. So link href equals, and I'm going to leave that empty, rel equals style sheet. Make sure you spell that right. And the reason I left that empty is because I'm going to take this line here, copy it, paste it twice, because I have 3 of these. So let's get the order here right. Base, if you recall, will reset our style sheet. So I put base in there, and you can see that it reset the style sheet. Styles4.css, some styles to it. And, if we screwed this up, like we forgot the T, it'll still look like this. All right, let's do a little debugging, just because we're getting to more advanced things, and maybe you run into a problem like this and you want to figure it out. So I'm going to open this in a new tab. I'm going to view source. And there's a couple things you can do. Actually, from here, if you go to F12, you go to your debugging tools, you can see down here, refuse to apply style from that. This is giving us an error that 404, meaning failed to load resource. Okay, so this is giving us an idea that that's broken. Or if I look here, I click on TF base, it gives me the file back. I click on TF styles, and it gives me a file not found. So that's how I know that I screwed that up. And then how to fix it. Okay. And finally, tfprint2.css. So we're going to have a print version of the page. But, this is how we've been adding CSS, but what we need to do is actually specify the media for this CSS. So the base is going to be used for all devices. The style sheet is only being used for screen devices, the style sheet, and then the print style sheet is only being used when you print the page. And let's check this. And we're good to go. All right, so we have our base setup done. Let's continue. General flex. All right, so now we're going to tf styles4.css. Styles4 imports designs. All right, so we don't have to worry about designs. And in the general styles section, we'll create a flexbox layout for the body itself. And I'm going to take this, get rid of that, because we're here. Okay. I'm right here. The body displays as a flexbox oriented as a row, wrapping content to a new line. So my entire body I'm going to display as flex, and my flex flow is going to be row wrap. Now, In addition to these commands, we need to make the WebKit browser prefix version as well. So we also need to have here, and the WebKit version is going to go above these. We're going to say display minus WebKit flex and minus WebKit flex flow is going to be row wrap. So that was the general flex, and let me make sure. Okay, so we're going to test our page right now, and I don't know. Yeah, we saw a little bit of a change. This here kind of dropped down in size. Let's check this. Okay, that section completed. And again, as I complete a section, I'm going to come down and check this. Okay, so let's go into the section elements. Right here, the page content is divided into two section elements with IDs left and right. Let's take a look at this. We have section left, which is the archive. That's this here. And then we have section right, which is all this stuff. Okay. Always good to look at what we are working on here. Create a style rule for the left section that sets its growth and shrink rates to 1 and 8 respectively and sets its basis size to 130 pixels. Okay, so we're going to say this is going to flex 1, 8, and 130 pixels. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to go on to the section right. And section right requires more screen. Its growth and shrink rate are 8 and 1, and the base is 351. So 8, 1, 351 pixels. And let's see if that had a change. It did. So remember, our body is flex row wrap. This element here, let me take this and move it off to the right here. Okay, this is set at a base of 130 pixels, but it is currently grown up to 190 pixels. And then right started at 351, but it grew up to 833. And as I resize this, get rid of some of this stuff. As I resize this window, you can see that grows and shrinks. Okay. All right, so that's working nicely, but we also need to have this as WebKit. And, I've mentioned I'm not a huge, this is super important. Most browsers support Flex now, but headless Chrome, which is what MindTap uses to validate your code, does not. So if they're checking to see what the page looks like, you're going to need that WebKit Flex in there. And then for the tips section tips, there's a whole section here just of tips, which has an article and an aside. Oh, and there's multiple ones. Okay, so this is a tip and this is a tip. So for these tips, add a style rule that displays the class of tips section as flexboxes in the row direction with wrapping, which is exactly what we did for the body. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to paste that there, come back and refresh. All right, so now we have, I'm trying to figure out how I want to look at this. Let's inspect this. We have tips, we have an article and an aside, and this wrapped. All right. So I think we're done with section elements. Let's validate that. Good to go. Let's move on to the article elements. The articles within each tips section need to occupy more of the screen width. Create a style rule for the article element. So it's asking for the article element that lays them out as flex items with a growth of 2, shrink of 1, and a basis of 351. Sounds really familiar. Sounds just like this one, only it's going to be 2-1, not 8-1. Let's check the article. Great. And then the aside is flex items with a growth of 1, shrink of 2, base of 250. Very much like our section left. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that. I'm going to change section left to aside. And this should be 1, 2 with a base of 250. Let's validate that. completed. Let's go take a look at what that looks like. Here we go. So this is originally 351. This is originally 250, and they shrink and grow at different rates. Okay. And the navigation list. Good. I'm glad we're getting to this because the navigation's kind of driving me crazy up here. Create a style for the UL element. UL element within the horizontal navigation list. If I look at tips, go to the top, the UL element within the horizontal navigation list. So this nav class equals horizontal means I want nav class equals horizontal, I want nav dot horizontal, and I want the UL that is within that, displaying it as a flexbox in column orientation with wrapping. So very similar here, displayed as a flexbox with column wrapping. Let's go take a look at what that looks like. That didn't do anything. Let me also add the WebKit version here. Let me take a peek here. Okay, I'm guessing, and I haven't done this assignment yet, I'm guessing when we get up here, we're going to change the navigation for tablet and desktop devices because this is a bad navigation for desktop device right now. But let's see if this works. Okay, that's what it wanted us to do. We're definitely not done here, but let's continue on. Go to the mobile device section, create a media query for screen devices with a maximum width of 480 pixels. Okay, so again, this is something that you kind of use, you write once and you copy from project to project. So I'm going to look up CSS media queries. I think there's it's called default media queries or something like that. Oh, here we go. This is the one I normally use, this stuff, okay? So what we're looking for, these are typical device breakpoints. That's what I meant to search for. And what we're looking for is a media query for screen devices with a maximum width of 480. So that's like this. I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to paste it here, only we're talking 480 pixels. And then these dot, 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 we're going to get rid of that. So now within these curly brackets are going to be all the rules just for if our screen is less than 480 pixels. All right, so on mobile devices, the vertical list of links to archived parenting tips should be displayed in several columns at the bottom of the page. Within the media query you created in the last step, so they're talking about this media query, add the following rules to display the UL element within the vertical navigation list. All right, hang on, let's do this right now. Nav.vertical UL. Okay, so, and I think I spelled vertical wrong. Come over here, nav class equals vertical, copy that, paste that, okay. So this list here, we're going to display it as a flexbox. We're going to say the flow is as a column, and we're going to wrap the columns, and the height of the element is only 240 pixels. All right, and again, so if I take this and I refresh right now, nothing happened. And why did nothing happen? Because my screen width is still greater than 480 pixels. So I'm going to click on the device toolbar, which is this little icon right here. And now I'm able to say that my width is 480. And look at this. This has now been changed, right? The archive goes like this. All right. So if I go out of that, it's a straight line because it does not apply those rules. But as soon as I come down, I'm in responsive 411 by 720. It put it in that order. Okay. So what else are we going to do? We're going to, while I have this open, this left section, the archive isn't as important as the actual tips. Okay, so we want to get that towards the bottom. So section left, we are going to set the order to 99. So we're going to put it kind of at the bottom. Okay, and if I come back and refresh, so now we have our navigation, we have our tips, which is great, that important content's towards the top, but then we have our footer and then the left section. So we need to take that footer and set the order larger than 99. So if I say on the footer, the order is 100, come back and refresh. Now the footer is actually at the bottom. Okay, and now we have a kind of a nice mobile looking website. Let me just review this, make sure I have everything. I think I do. So we've done this, but we haven't added all of the WebKit work. Let's not forget, we need, I'm going to break this up with some blank lines here. Okay, so we had display flex flow column wrap. I copy and pasted display WebKit flex flow column wrap. All right, and then even order needs a WebKit prefix. But notice that I do the work. I make sure it looks right, and then I'm adding the WebKit stuff. Because if I screwed this up, then I'm going to have to change it in 2 places. All right, so made sure it looked good. And now I can come over here and validate the vertical list. Great. And now we're going to work on the horizontal list, which is up here. So we want to hide the navigation list at the top of the page when viewed on a mobile device, unless the user hovers, which is currently impossible to do on actual mobile devices, or taps a nav icon. Use the techniques shown in the tutorial. So, we've done this in class. You can review it in the book, but we are going to create it here. So we have this nav icon. Display the nav icon by creating a style rule for the nav icon to set its display as a block. So I'm going to take this thing, and remember, I'm still within this set of curly brackets. These rules are only being used for mobile devices. So that nav icon, we're going to display it as a block. And if I refresh, there, now we actually see the hamburger menu. And then we're going to hide the content of the navigation list by adding a style rule that sets the display of the UL element within the horizontal navigation list. So nav.horizontal UL, that display is none. So when I come back, refresh, let's try that again. Let's see if I probably spelled something wrong. I'm going to find nav class horizontal. I'm going to copy the word horizontal, and that just looks wrong. There we go. I spelled horizontal wrong. Try this again. There, now it's gone. So now this looks more like a mobile page, right? We recognize this hamburger menu. We have our tips, we have the archive. And when I click on this, I want it to do something. It gives us, look, it gives us everything here. When the response to the hover or touch by creating a style rule for this. So let's see what's going on here. Oh, we haven't used the plus in a while. Let's look up CSS selectors. Let's review what the plus is. Plus, so we're selecting an element plus another element, okay? Nav icon hover plus UL, and what that's referring to is the first element that's placed after that one. Okay, so it's the first UL after nav icon hovers, or when you just hover over the UL. We're going to set the display to block. All right, let's see if this works. When I click it, it opens. All right, so let's validate this code. And it worked. And you know what? There's a lot going on here. I'm going to throw some comments in. All right, I'm not going to go back and validate everything, but this is my navigation list stuff. I should be adding comments as I go along. Okay, go to the tablet and devices section right here. Create a media query for the screens and devices with a width of at least 481. So I'm going to take this media query. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it down here. I'm going to add my closing curly bracket. Okay, so this curly bracket, I'm going to line this up to. This curly bracket closes this media query. So at the end of the section we just worked on, you should have curly bracket, curly bracket. This one, it closes that section. Okay, it ends that or closes that. And we're creating a whole new section that if you're on the screen and your min width of 481 pixels. 481 pixels or more. What are we going to do? The contents of the horizontal navigation list at the top of the page should be displayed in several columns. Thank goodness, because if I get out of here, this is kind of ugly. All right. But if you remember that this list, which is this nav class horizontal UL, if you recall, nav horizontal UL displayed flex flow column wrap. But the problem is that this element just grows as much as it needs to. All right. So take a look at this. If I inspect this and I am looking at this UL, all right, I can go into here. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. So I have the UL selected, which is part of the nav class horizontal. And I'm going to say height is 240 pixels. And when I do that, it takes this UL and shrinks it, right? It gives it a set height. And because this is flex flow, it's going to display the information and then wrap. All right. And we can set this to, we have 240 pixels. I think I can use my scroll wheel. I can make it smaller, smaller, smaller. And look, like right here, we're at 220 pixels. If I go a little bit smaller, we kind of run out of room and it goes, this aid, there's not enough room for it, and moves up here. So reviews and blog then move over to the next column, and we can shrink it even more. All right. And look at that one. Now we go from, there's room for 3 columns. And when I shrink down to 190 pixels, it needs to go into 4 columns. All right. And we can shrink it even more. And, maybe like, I don't know. The book is actually telling us to make it 160. All right. So it's kind of neat that you can play with this and you can figure out where you want the height to be. And then we can even take this, copy it, and I'm going to set that nav with a class of horizontal UL. I'm going to set that height to 160. Okay. I selected those lines. I hit tab to move them in because these are within this media query. Everything within this media query should be tabbed in one line. And it just helps you understand that like all of this stuff is within this media query. And for this section, it's not that complicated. There's only one rule that we're putting in here. But 160 looks like this. There we are at 160. So this is my desktop site. Looks like this. And when I go to my mobile view, it looks like this. All right, almost done. Oh, look at that. We are done. I thought we were going to have to actually write some print rules, but we don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and show you this is what the page looks like. I'm going to hit print. And what's neat is that when you hit print in your print preview, it gives you an idea. This is what it's going to look like. All right. So you don't actually have to print the file. Just your print preview applies that print style sheet. So I would encourage you to review the print style sheet, and you can see that it's hiding some information. It's saying what size to set the page at. It's making the logo bigger. And then some important things, any links, you can't click on a link. So it sets the color to black, no underline. And then after links, it's going to add some content. And it's going to add a space. And then in parentheses, it's going to add what the hyperlink is. All right, so right here, you see Midwest Editors Conference as a link. When I hit print, here we have Midwest Editors Conference. It's not underlined, it's still black. And then after it added the link to it because, on the web page, we click links. But if somebody prints this and they see the blue and underline, that does them no good. It tells them that there's a link, but we're not telling them what it is. So by adding that CSS, it's adding the link, the URL as text after the link. All right, and here's another one. Here's another one. So that's pretty cool. On the aside, page break after is always, you don't want to have page breaks within images or lists. And then we specify the number of orphans and widows for our page. All right, so we didn't have to write that print style sheet, so we should be done. We'll do a final test. And we are done. So if you review our tasks, you can see everything is done. And once we're all set, you can submit your grade. All right, nicely done. That was Tutorial 5 Case Problem Review.